Hey everyone, welcome back to Tethered and Whole. I'm Matt, and today we're diving into a skill that quietly determines the quality of our relationships, the tone of our classrooms, and honestly, it's the shape of our days. And that is reframing. That's the ability to reinterpret a moment, a comment, or a behavior through a different, usually more generous lens. It's a skill I didn't even know I needed early in my teaching career, but looking back, it was a skill that would have saved me a lot of stress, a lot of tension, and tight-jawed hallway interactions. Let me take you back to the beginning. During my first few years of teaching, I was absolutely convinced my principal was out to get me. Every interaction felt loaded. "Hey, Matt, I'd love to see your lesson plans next week." My immediate internal reaction, does he think I can't plan? Does he think I'm unprepared or sloppy? Then, after I'd send a student to the office, "Hey, Matt, I noticed Billy came again to the office the other day for not turning in his homework. Let's go over some other ways to handle this." And inside, I was thinking, seriously? I don't have time to become the homework police. Why is this suddenly on me? Then, after a classroom observation, "Hey, Matt, I'd like you to consider recording your teaching so that we can work on your questioning strategies." Which I then translated to, "Wow, does he really think I can't even ask a good question? What's next?" Here's the thing. I didn't just hear the words. I framed them. And that frame wasn't flattering. It was defensive. It was fearful, small. The brain is incredibly quick at constructing meaning. It fills in the blanks before we realize that a blank even existed. And without the skill of reframing, intentionally choosing a different interpretation, without that skill, we end up living inside a story that, well, quite frankly, it just might not be true. So I spent the entire year doing just that, creating meaning without ever verifying it, framing our relationship in an entirely negative light. I dreaded seeing him in the hallway. I did everything he asked, but not with a glad heart. And I carried this low simmer of resentment, not because of what he did, but because of the frame I kept putting around it. So fast forward to the end of the school year. We ended up in a meeting about something completely unrelated. And right near the end, he shifted the conversation to our relationship. And for the first time all year, I had it. I decided to be blunt. So I started with, "You always," and "you never," and "you make me feel." The blame poured out in one long, jagged tirade. He listened. He didn't react. He didn't counter. When I finished, he simply said, "Matt, thank you for being honest." Then he went on to remind me that he had personally recruited me from the middle school methods class I had taken from him years earlier. He said, "Matt, my job is to help every teacher in this building become the best version of themselves. You already have tremendous background knowledge. I'm trying to help you share that with students more effectively." In that moment, the frame cracked, and suddenly I looked back and I saw the whole year differently. It wasn't criticism. It was coaching. It wasn't judgment on his part. It was investment. It wasn't micromanagement. It was care. And that shift, the shift in how I interpreted his intentions, changed everything. Physically, like my shoulders loosened, my heart opened, our relationship rebuilt itself from that moment forward. That was my first real lesson in the power of reframing. And I've been teaching it ever since. See, folks, reframing isn't about pretending the hard things aren't hard. It's not about sugarcoating or avoiding the truth. Reframing is about expanding the possible meanings of a moment so we don't get stuck in the first fear-based interpretation. Psychologists call our default interpretation bias the fundamental attribution error. When something negative happens, we instinctively blame the person's character rather than considering the context. Fritz Heider described this in 1958. And Lee Ross expanded it way back in the 70s, and it shows up today constantly in schools. For example, a coworker snaps at you and we think they're rude. A colleague misses a deadline and we assume they're irresponsible. A student blurts out and we see them as being disrespectful. But reframing it interrupts this pattern. It invites questions like, what else could be true? What might they be carrying today? What part of this is situational, not personal? And suddenly, the world gets softer. There's also research in positive psychology showing that the way we interpret events, especially ambiguous ones, shapes our well-being and social relationships. Lyubomirsky, King, and Diener found that cultivating optimistic interpretations, even small ones, correlates with increased happiness, improved coping, and healthier relationships. Again, this isn't about toxic positivity. It's about intentionality. A reframe is not a denial. It's a deliberate choice to widen the lens. The truth is, reframing is a muscle. And like any muscle, it strengthens with practice. And it shows up everywhere. In the email that triggers you, in the hallway comment that stings, in the student who tests your patience, in the meeting where your idea gets ignored. Every moment carries meaning. Reframing is how we choose which meaning we live with. And here's the miracle. When we reframe, we actually change ourselves. We move from reactivity to reflection, from defensiveness to curiosity, and from judgment to empathy. So here's your anchor strategy for the week. Reframe one negative interaction, just one. When someone rubs you the wrong way, pause and ask yourself, what other explanations are possible here? What situational factors might be influencing this moment? If I gave this person the most generous interpretation, what would it be? You don't have to settle on that last interpretation. You just have to try it on. Because the moment you open yourself to a reframe, you open yourself to empathy. And empathy transforms everything. Relationships, classrooms, teams, and most importantly, your own peace. So, thanks for joining me today, friends. If this episode resonated, share it with someone who might be stuck in a tough story about someone else. Give it a like, a follow, a comment, or a review. Reframing is a skill that multiplies when we practice it together. Until next time, stay tethered, stay whole, and remember, you can't always choose the moment, but you can always reframe its meaning. See you next week.